I can't resist making a couple of comments. The guy in the white shirt there is Barry Turnrose, who, Seth, you may remember. And his job was to give me offset coordinates from lunar craters for where the retroreflector might be. But we also did a raster scan.
Yes.
Now, the telescope on the front spiders had two retroreflectors that were very accurately made. So we knew that the beam from them came directly back onto the telescope and finally to a guiding eyepiece. There were two mirrors like this. The first mirror was coated to reflect the laser light. So the laser light came up off of that mirror into the telescope. But it was transparent to optical light, which went to the second mirror and down to a TV guider. And my job was to look at where the splash caused by the retroreflectors on the telescope landed on the moon. And I moved that splot around to the right position. And Walter Cronkite said that that splot that came from the telescope was from the moon on the first night.
Now, for those, Joe, thank you for that. I think you heard it from the expert. Thanks a lot, Joe, for that. I always love it when there's somebody in the audience that was there to help us. Now, for us that are old enough to remember, in the days news of fake news, remember fake? Walter had the notoriety of the. Can everyone remind me what he was called? Anyway, he was the truth of the news. Most trusted man in America. Now, Walter had, Joe and I were talking about this earlier, Walter had been told, well, how are we going to know when we fired a laser into the moon? And so he was told that you're going to notice some little spots on those reflectors, retroreflectors that Joe just mentioned. So he's sitting up there wherever he is in CBS or ABC, whatever it was. And so he announced it because he saw these spots, that something already had gone to the moon, and we got in the back. We were all scratching our head. Hold it, Walter. That isn't the answer yet.
Let me make one more comment. When we got the returns from the moon, we could move off the position where we thought the retroreflector was, and then we got nothing. And then we moved it back onto the retroreflector, and we got returns.
Yes.
But more than that, over the night, we noticed a drift. So instead, we had a projected orbit for the moon, and we were expecting all of the returns to line up at, say, 0 coordinate. But it wasn't, it was slanted. And we scratched our head. How did we get this slant in there? Because it was too much. We knew too much about the orbit of the moon to have that big an error in the knowledge of the orbit. And then it hit us. Where is the telescope? The telescope was not at the position of Lick Observatory. The telescope was at the position where the telescope was. Lick Observatory was at the main building. And when you calculate the distance and the fact that the moon is setting and increasing that distance, that accounted for the drift. So something we were not expecting, we saw, and only afterwards did we understand it. So there is no way that that reflector was not on the moon.
Well, Joe, if you don't mind, I think everyone's count, maybe that they're not aware of who you are. Could you just sort of give who you are in this role that you had there in the Apollo, in the lunar mission? Tell us a little bit about who you are and your relationship. You're the expert here now to helping me.
I didn't come here to give a speech.
Okay, well, all right. We'll leave you out of that.
But at least tell everybody your name, Joe.
Yes. See, there's folk in the audience that were on this team.
Okay, I'm Joe Wampler, and at the time I was an assistant professor at the University of California, Santa Cruz. And Jim Fowler and I were in charge of the laser experiment at Santa Cruz. And let me just say one other thing. Jim and I have been in contact, and he feels that if we had not acquired the retroreflector, that NASA would have cut the funding for it because the astronauts had already left. NASA felt that there was a real danger the retroreflector would be covered. And so there was a real, and McDonald was not acquiring it. In fact, McDonald didn't acquire it until about a month after we acquired it. And that was probably a long enough delay that NASA would have cut the funding. So the contribution of Lick was we found it, we told everybody where it was, and we knew that the orbit of the moon that Mulholland had calculated at JPL was a reasonably good orbit.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. Everybody, I just want you to know who this guy was. All right.
All right, last chance.